Hello, and welcome to Finding Your Holy Grail, a show produced through passionate World Talk Radio, whose goal is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. We would like to thank station manager Jeannie White and CEO Lillian Caldwell. This podcast is not a medical show, so for advice, please consult your healthcare provider. Finding Your Holy Grail is all about living fearlessly in the post-pandemic world, and we provide our listeners with very practical resources about how to do exactly that. So thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Dr. Gordon McMillan, for this week's show. And this week, we thought it would be helpful to continue our supernatural theme with a show focused on spiritual healing. And this permits us to share content from a remarkable interview, which my co-creator, Dr. Mandy Simon, recorded with an amazing holistic health counselor who treats physical symptoms with mind, body, and spiritual healing practices. The interview itself is part of an online speaker series which Mandy and I are hosting for the Finding Your Holy Grail community. We've invited amazing global leaders to share their insights on how the energy of the planet has been changing with the pandemic. So throughout April, we're broadcasting Mandy's interviews with 25 experts from around the world and sharing their perspectives for navigating the post-pandemic reality that we now find ourselves in. You're welcome to join us and listen to Mandy's interviews. The online video series is called Achieve Your Goals, a New Paradigm, Solutions for the Post-Pandemic World. It's free to participate, and you can join in by signing up at findingyourholygrail.com. The interviews themselves are incredible, and the expert speakers explore different aspects of our conscious and subconscious minds. They make the important point that as a humanity, we are moved from human doing to human being, and they share their insights to help us flourish by adopting new ways of living. In this radio show, we're delighted to be sharing content from Mandy's interview with the holistic health practitioner, Cathrine Silver. So let's dive into this 30-minute discussion between Mandy and Cathrine.
Hello and welcome to Finding Your Holy Grail. I am your host, Mandy Simon, and I am joined with my very special guest today, Cathrine Silver. Cathrine, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mandy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I'm so happy that you're here, and it's great that you could join us in this space. And some people will be familiar with your work, but why don't you just give us a little bit of your background and what you do?
Well, I think that I'm just going to say led by spirit to where I am right now. I would have never thought 30 years ago that I would be doing this, but every step of the way of anybody's journey leads us to a place that sometimes we find ourselves surprisingly.
Yeah.
So I am what I call a holistic health counselor. And I mostly do things like biological decoding, and I'll explain that in a minute, grief counseling. And it's a very holistic, which means incorporating the physical with mind, body, and the spiritual. We have to bring that triangle together. And in the allopathic world, it's a very, I'm going to say, mechanical world. And they do a very good job with the mechanics. But sometimes that's why diseases return, because we haven't, I'm going to say, helped heal the underlying circumstances which created the disease in the first place. And the way I like to look at disease is just a message from us to us that says we have this underlying conflict, and it's simply what I would say an imbalance in our system. And if we look at it that way, not so much as the diagnosis is the label that we have to own, but it's only a message of where we are in the moment. It's an indicator. That's all it is. And so that's another thing is I don't want people to own that. It just means, okay, we've got some work to do and we can shift this energetically. by changing our perception of the circumstances that we find ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing. I mean, as you're aware, I have board certifications in the allopathic world, and my approach to patients has been that disease is not necessarily something that you have. It is a description or feedback of information about a dis-ease in
Yep.
our bodies, right? And
Yep.
your message is very clear to me about how if we choose to adopt the identity of the disease, then it becomes actually part of us. And this real power and understanding in working with ourselves as well as other people to recognize that we have power over this, and that if we think differently about this, we can do that shift, as you say.
Yeah, and we briefly touched on this, but in the past, the church has sort of taken responsibility for our soul because you were not allowed. You had to go through a secondary or intermediate person. You
Mhm.
weren't allowed to talk to God. That was not in their beliefs.
Yeah.
The government sort of takes responsibility for our finances, and the healthcare system has stepped in to take responsibility for our well-being.
Mhm.
But I guess I'm going to say as we move forward in the new energy, we are getting that power. We are actually co-creators in our own life, and we have that power within us. And so part of my job is getting people to recognize their magnificence
Mhm.
and that they are here on purpose, on time, and that we just get to shift our perception around our circumstances, and we can create a whole different outcome.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting point. And it is, as you say, with the new energies of the planet, which is also very timely for what we're talking about here on this particular series, is is really coming into this moment. Unlike when I did the long series last year, we were looking at how do we stay really robust and respond to everything that's happening with the first lockdowns around the globe for the pandemic. And now that we're a year into this and we're recognizing, okay, this is the new normal, and that the new normal is actually here because it's pushing us to new levels in terms of what we understand about ourselves, and that we have so much power and ability to do these things for ourselves, especially in the healing circumstances.
Yeah, and two things. I would say that there is an agenda behind it, and the fear is being pushed. And every time the fear energetically, what I feel lets up, they come up with a new angle to instill more fear. So I would ask people to use, I'm going to say, some critical thinking skills and
Mhm.
ask, does this make sense? Does it pass the common sense test?
Mhm.
Because I believe the divine creative source, and whatever you call that, has
Mhm.
designed our bodies and our immune system to work exactly the way it's supposed to. And I
Yeah.
don't think man can trump, I'm going to say, God, the divine creative source, all that is, whatever you
Yeah.
believe in. I'm not here to debate that or what you call it. And I believe, even what the Buddha says is all those answers lie within us.
Mhm. Mhm.
One of my logo is inspired wellness from within.
Yeah.
So, with that, even being able to empower ourselves and not be swept up in this, I'm going to say, pandemic of fear,
Yeah. Yeah.
is and create your own bubble. Everybody asks me, how are you doing? I say, well, I'm just groovy. I live in my own bubble, and I do.
Yeah.
I've got my projects. I do my art. I have a few close friends that I visit. I've never worn a mask. You
Yeah.
know, um, I believe that my immune system is good, and there's prevention. Vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, selenium, NAC. All of those things boost our immune system. And I'm just saying this to those people that are out there because then they don't have to walk in fear.
Yeah.
We've
And
got
I think
tools to empower ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think that, the one thing that we all recognize is that each of us have what those different levels are, right? And so when you're in your own bubble and you're doing these things, this is your level of comfort. And you've looked at things as time has gone by and you've been able to decide where you fit on that spectrum. And I think what's so interesting about the work that you do is that this is also how you do work with people, right? Is that people come to you at all different levels of of their of their understanding of themselves, and then how do they get a little bit more awareness, and are they ready to move beyond that awareness? And so perhaps you could talk a little bit about some of the work that you do with your clients and helping them to open up and understand perhaps their world on a different level.
Well, I think whenever we are able to, I'm going to say, expand our belief,
Mm,
then we have new information, and new
yeah,
information leads to new answers.
yeah.
And sometimes it's stuff that we've never been told or exposed to. And
Mhm,
so we have those aha moments.
mhm,
So, one of the first things is I ask the person that is in front of me for pure intent and verbal permission
mhm.
to heal. So
Yeah.
that is the first thing. After we've talked about where they are in the, I'm going to say, present moment right
Mhm,
now,
mhm.
and their unresolved conflicts, which happen in the form of disease or illness, accidents, all of that kind of thing, begin to tell me a story.
Mhm.
So based on that story, I get kind of a feeling where they are, and I get a lot of information intuitively.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of where we go the first session. The second session, or where I'm guided, sometimes it doesn't always happen that way, but we work with the inner child, because there's so many times we have wounding from our inner child, and the inner child interprets it different than than an adult. A
Mhm.
human adult, because we're only looking at it through the eyes of a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, and we only have so much information. But when we
Mhm.
step back and look at it from
Yeah.
our 40-year-old self,
Yeah.
then we say, oh, I kind of get this. And so we work on, I'm going to say, really loving ourselves just the way we are, and realizing that everything sort of fell into place. Sometimes it's like a quantum Tetris game, right? And
Yeah.
everything just kind of falls into place. And then based on where the person is, we look at past lives, and they could be our own lineage, or they could be the lineage of our ancestors,
Mhm.
and say, how is this brought forward? Because sometimes there's a transition or a death, and the trauma is not healed, and so it's brought forward, I'm going to say, in the ancestor or
Mhm.
ourself,
Mhm.
ready to be healed. And once it's healed, put that check mark in, it'll never come back again.
Yeah, and this is really about healing from the source of where it comes from, that wound comes from. And so this is the big difference in terms of the dis-ease that shows up in our body as an ailment that's happening to us, and then really where is the core of this issue. And you said something really quite interesting, which is that there's this frequency of joy that is often associated with our blood. And so if we look at, the example you gave was high cholesterol and how prevalent this is. And one of the areas that I have worked a lot in is cardiology. So,
Right.
seeing the, high blood pressure, seeing the high blood cholesterol, seeing all of these things, and recognizing, that every 20 seconds in America, someone has a heart attack. I mean, these are staggering statistics in a place where there's over 500 million people. And it's a really interesting thing to think about, that when we learn to understand that sometimes what we're going through is actually because it came from a familial source. And they'll say, oh, you have diabetes because your parents had diabetes, or you have high blood pressure because your parents had high blood pressure. And then we start to see these patterns of life. It gives a whole new awareness to where we are and who we are.
Yeah, and actually, heart attacks are about territory loss,
Very interesting.
which is
Very
interesting, right?
interesting. Yeah.
And when I first discovered that, I said to my stepmother, I said, when was my father's heart attack?
Mm.
Well, it was during the middle of his divorce,
Yeah.
where he had to sell his beloved, the barns where he kept his horses, and he lost the house. And so
Yeah.
this was all stuff that he had initiated in the marriage.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the judge, hit the gavel on the desk, and it was gone.
Yeah.
And so that was, I'm going to say part of him. It doesn't necessarily have to be material loss. It could be financial. It could be health. It could be, it's like part of our ownership and part of who we are. So it looks different with different people, but that's what heart attacks are about. Cancer is about really repressed kind of emotional, things that we haven't wanted to address. It's okay, you go ahead and do what you want, I'm not important. You're not really sort of standing up for who you are, but that resentment at some level begins to build up. Even breast cancer is problems within the nest, and it's how we perceive. It could be a grown child, it could be a young child, so the body in its innate wisdom wants to solve the problem. So if we look at breast cancer, those growths could be the body saying, let's create more milk, right? As because that would be happening to create another child, right? So we have to look at things like that. Diabetes is about feeling love, because the slang term for a lot of people, they say, give me some sugar when they
Yeah,
want love.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I absolutely love this conversation, because if we think, just fundamentally think about the territory loss of a heart attack, the classic examples that will come to mind for most people who are watching this today will recognize that the people who have been married for 65 years and they lose a spouse, and in the next moment, the other spouse has died of a heart attack, or the high powered business person who is having such difficulty in their career and trying to get to the next level and didn't get the job promotion, or is trying to do this. And it's so fascinating to understand that, I mean, the whole world is energy. And when we start to understand that this information that has a title of heart disease, whatever it is a frequency that gives us information about about something, we start to see the world in a whole new way. And what you have brought up is so beautiful, because you use the word perception, and we were talking before we came on today about what happens to us when we have a perception shift.
Right. So in all of those cases, if we, I'm going to say, own our magnificence, then
Yeah.
we don't get the love outside of ourselves. If we don't own the fact that success is based on the next promotion,
Yeah.
and I like to say, follow the cosmic breadcrumbs,
Mm-hmm.
because although there's an illusion that we are in control,
Mm-hmm.
but we are really not in control. The energy of the universe is always like working with us. And sometimes I'm going to say it's our ego, which one time I heard is easing God out,
Mm-hmm.
that it wants to take the control. So really, if you think about it that way, it's a whole lot less work.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you can just sort of go with the flow and try to, look at the circumstances a little differently than what maybe you were taught. Like, okay, well, did this happen for a reason? And what is the underlying reason why I didn't get the promotion? Maybe it's because you aren't going to be on a plane in 2 weeks and the plane goes down, or we don't know what happens. Carolyn May said years ago, if you miss a plane, she goes, go have a cappuccino. You weren't supposed to be on that plane. And it's not necessarily that the plane go down, but it may lead to a whole domino of sequence that isn't going to work out well, or we don't know what's going to happen, because the universe is based on potentials. And there are so many potentials out there. So if something happens that disappoints you, say, well, there's a reason. I'm being protected. I'm being protected. And I get to say, thank you. Because even though I don't understand it right now, I know that the universe has my best interest in mind.
I really love this perspective. And I think the reason it's so important as I hear this from you is that think about how eager we are when something works out really well for us and we say, I was in the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
You know, so this is the point, is that you missed the plane because you needed to be in a different place at that time. And whatever that ends up being, as you say, with the potentials, and many people will describe this as the infinite potentials of life, which opens us up to what? Miracles.
Right.
And so, if it doesn't take the form we're expecting it to take, it doesn't mean that we get to be disappointed. It means that we get to keep going with the openness for the possibility.
Right. We just look, the treasure wasn't underneath that rock, right?
Yeah.
So we get
Yeah.
to look, and that's why I call it cosmic breadcrumbs, because we, it's like following those invisible things, and we never know exactly where it's going to appear, but we know about synchronicity and that there's no coincidences, and we meet exactly the person we're supposed to meet at the right time. So if we can, expand this out, then everything has to be in divine order, even though we may not understand it with our, I'm going to use the term 3D linear eyesight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as you rise in frequency or vibrational bandwidth, then you're able to sometimes see through what you couldn't see before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, for how we've been conditioned in our societies, one of the things that lends us to that is when we have a greater awareness of what's going on with us within our own selves, our own lives, we have a greater perspective, which gives us more awareness, or you could say more awareness that gives us a different perspective, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just, I love the way that you're describing it, and I'm just working to create that bridge for people where this might be a really new concept for them, because it's something they've been doing their whole lives. It is that aha moment of saying, oh, perhaps this is how it works, and recognize that this is a true benefit, and it may seem magical, but it's just true.
Yeah, I just invite them next time they have a slight disappointment, or they have to wait for the train, on their way to work, or they miss the bus or something like that. You can just pause for a moment, and you could even shut your eyes or not, and you could say, God inside, what is it that I need to know?
Mm-hmm.
And then if they just quiet themselves and are actually open and invite their invite an answer, and it becomes more clear. And as clarity begins, and they begin to trust that, because that's not a source that people, your mother didn't say, well, go ask the angels and guides, they'll let you know.
Yeah,
that was not part of my reality growing up, but once we begin to open a new door to new possibilities, it gives us another tool and a way of looking at life. And it's so empowering. I guess that's the thing, is I'm trying to empower people that they have it within them. But it's like a muscle, and you have to continue to use it. You have to, the first time you walk around, or even an infant, how many times did it take them standing up and falling down before they eventually start to walk?
Yeah.
If this is a muscle we've never used and a concept we've never thought of, the first thing I would say is just sit with it and ask, does this feel true to me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really love the example of the infant, because a lot of times, like when I'm working with stroke patients, for example, in the hospital, they may have lost the ability to move their left arm. Let's just use that as a starting point. And I say to them, there's some wiring in your brain that has been clogged up that's not allowing that neurotransmitting signal to reach that. And then I sort of explain to them, that the reason that we don't start out walking is because our brains have to develop in such a way that the wiring is created that allows them, at 6 months to have a torso to be able to sit up. Before that, they don't really have the muscles to do that. And then, and everything reaches out to the rest of the body. And so what you're describing here as a muscle is this rewiring of understanding how we tell our neurologic system, how we talk to the awareness of what is going on in the energies of our body and the universe. That is this infinite wisdom that we always have access to create a much more real experience. But it does take practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're bigger than who we see in the mirror. We are
Yeah.
just not this corporeal body. We are so much bigger. And,
Yeah.
and when you realize that, even our aura goes out like 26 feet.
Yeah.
And so, even when we sit next to somebody, we are entangled. The
Yes.
universe is entanglements and potentials. And
Yeah.
so, I'm thinking, like, when I discovered them, like, wow, this is so cool. It wasn't
Yeah.
anything that I was afraid of. It was like, oh, this is amazing. And that's what I would like to, excite people who
Yeah.
watch this to think, oh my God, it is so much bigger than I was ever told. Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, I love it. And, now actually, I think would be a great time to tell them about this book that you created, that you've made available for them, because I think it sort of goes along this way.
It's certainly a segue. So a few years ago, I put together a little ebook called Connecting the Dots. And it talks about the mind-body connection. And I give several examples of, change the name, so don't worry about that, but of people and circumstances. One was a 2-year-old child who witnessed a neighbor backing over his brother.
Mm.
And the family was never allowed to speak about it. And, at 67 years old, I'm going to say Tony told me that he didn't even know where his brother was buried. Well, when he was in his 60s, guess what he got? Colon cancer and almost died. So, was there a trigger? I believe that something comes along energetically and then triggers this at the appropriate time. So those are sort of some of the examples, but then I bring in, Dean Ornish and Bruce Lipton and Steve Tucker and those sorts of people in this little synopsis. So you can begin to think about disease, dis-ease, and illness in a different way. And if we have the power to create it, we also have the power to heal it. And so
this is the fascinating journey, right? This is the lifetime journey. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and there's always another level and another level and another level. But if we are spoken to by spirit, and 85% of the globe believes in something bigger than ourselves, and then how does spirit talk to us? It's signs, symbols, and metaphors. And so there's, again, it's a different language that we're not used to hearing. And so this ebook is really just an opening to a bigger possibility.
I'm so grateful for you creating it. It's really exciting. So, and thank you for making it available to everyone.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah. So tell us how we can get in touch with you. What is your website?
My website is cathrinesilver.com, and I'm going to spell my name because I was named after my Danish grandmother, and it has a little different spelling. It's CATHRINE, silver as in the color. .com, and there you can access the ebook. I also do a monthly newsletter. There's no advertisements in it. I do a lifestyle piece where, last month it was about rewriting our stories. This month it's going to be about who are we, so it addresses those questions. I give a recipe because I really believe that part of healing is creating food, and food comes from love in the kitchen. And so I think that energy is disseminated through our intention. As a matter of fact, when you go into a restaurant, the maitre d' is always great, but you don't know what's happening in the kitchen. And that energy is put how they cook the food. So the only benefit, and I always like to see a silver lining, is, the whole lockdown has created us to get back into maybe having family dinners and maybe cooking our meals and maybe doing things that, normally everybody's going 16 different directions. So I would say, if we could find a gift in that, let's assume that is the gift. Okay, and then they can always email me. My email is even easier. It's Cathy with a C, CATHY, Silver health@gmail.com. Like I said, biological decoding, look at the connection between our illness and how we rewrite our story and step into a place of empowerment. It is not only a physical thing, but it's a mind, body, and spiritual connection that I bring on all of those levels. So
It's great. I so enjoy talking to you because, when we were talking before, I said, oh, we could just sit here forever and talk. And I feel the same exactly at this moment. So what would you say? Is there anything you have that you'd like to say to the audience before we finish today?
Well, I'm going to give them the mantra that I shared with you because I really want people to begin to own their divine essence and their magnificence. And sometimes this is really hard for people. So I'm just going to say this, and they can always write it down, or if they email me, I will email it to them directly.
Right.
I am that I am. I deserve to be here, loved by God. I am magnificent. And I get chills as I share this because I think it's so important that people begin to really discover who they are. I like to say we're almost like earth angels walking in disguise and blindfolded without realizing our power and our true identity. And if we can even begin to get a glimpse of that, can you imagine? Our light is what changes the world. And that's what I want the listeners out there to know, is they carry a light of beauty, and they, everywhere they walk, it touches somebody.
I can feel the truth of your words. They're really beautiful. And
Okay,
I'm so grateful for you sharing them with this community, because the intention and the energy that you bring to this is really meant for this group of people. So I'm sure that they will feel it at home as well. It's really beautiful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with the viewers and the listeners today. It's important that everybody begin to, own this what's inside of them, because that's how the world shifts and changes as we move forward.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing your light with us today. It's really beautiful. So
and you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Cathrine. And for everyone watching at home, we're so happy you tuned in. And please definitely www.Cathrine, CATHRINE Silver.com. So thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Isn't it amazing how Cathrine reads illness as a message that we have an inner conflict to resolve, because there's some imbalances in our system? I think it's incredible how Cathrine helps people to rewrite their stories and heal themselves from adverse circumstances. And I just love how she emphasizes the importance of giving ourselves permission to heal, and of shifting energetically by changing the perception that we adopt. So this week's challenge for each of you at home is to remind yourself that you have both physical body and a spirit. So 1, reflect on a time when you have had a health scare. What else was going on in your life at that time? Consider what other influences might have contributed to your poor health from both a spiritual and an energetic perspective. Point 2, think about your current well-being from a holistic point of view. Are there any unresolved issues, tensions, or disruptions which might be affecting your health by causing you dis-ease? And 3, take an objective look to identify any practical steps which you might help take to get into the right relationship with whatever it is that's exerting a negative influence on your health right now. You can find out more about Cathrine Silver and her holistic health practice at cathrinesilver.com. I would like to thank Passionate World Talk Radio for providing a platform on the internet radio show for our host, Finding Your Holy Grail. For more information, go to www.passionateworldtalkradio.com. To subscribe to our community, it's findingyourholygrail.com. And please do write to us at findingyourholygrail@gmail.com. Remember, you can sign up to join the series with all of the amazing speakers at findingyourholygrail.com and clicking on the interview series tab. There's a welcome video and a page with all the speakers' profiles who are participating. I so look forward to you joining us and learning more about our transition from human doing to human being. So until next week, keep well and stay brave.